Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe, and do consider supporting the channel via PayPal or Patreon. You'll find the links in the video description. The big news of round 13, the penultimate round of the Candidates Tournament, is that Jan-Krzysztof Duda made a solid draw against Richard Rapport. The game ended like this in a threefold repetition. And with that draw, Jan-Krzysztof Duda wins the tournament and therefore will contest the next World Championship match. Now, whether he plays against Magnus Carlsen or whoever is second place in the candidates is another question. And indeed, the fight for second place in the tournament is still very much alive. Now, just looking at the other results of round 13, FIDE against Ding Liren, that ended in a draw. Rajabov and Caruana ended in a draw. And we're going to be looking at the game between Nakamura and Duda. So Hikaru Nakamura, Jan-Krzysztof Duda. Going into this round, well, Nakamura had 6.5 points. So, you know, he's in contention. Duda, well, behind on 5 points. So Nakamura very much still in the fight. If he draws this game or if he wins this game, he's still in with a fight for second place. So let's see what happened. Of course, he was wanting to press against Duda, who's not having the best tournament. And it's an open Sicilian. That certainly suits Nakamura. He's got an open fight, and it's a Najdorf. Good to see. Bishop e3. Well, if you remember, Nakamura played this against FIDE a couple of rounds before and crushed FIDE. So why not repeat it again? Knight c6 was played by FIDE here, but bishop e7 by Duda. And the main line here is bishop c4. But Nakamura played h3. It's a little bit unusual. I have to say I'm not that keen on h3. It looks slightly odd to me. You know, I don't like these little pawn moves at the side of the board. But the point is this. If black castles, then white will press forward with g4 and then g5 and actually go for queenside castling. And that's a very double-edged position. So, you know, this is a reasonable way for white to play. I think this is the idea of h3 and g4 in this position. But instead of casting, Duda waited for a move with h6. So perhaps he's just wants to see what's going on before he commits his king. Of course, h6 can be a useful move because you want to play bishop e6 and you rule out knight g5. You also rule out bishop g5 in some cases. And now Nakamura goes back to bishop c4, bishop e6 played. Of course, this is the standard move in this kind of position where you have pawns on d6 and e5. The bishop sits so nicely on e6, covering the squares. And if that's exchanged off, then the pawn does a very good job of covering the squares. So black should be comfortable there. So now Nakamura just drops back for the moment. Knight c6. Now knight h4. So if black were to castle here, then it's possible for the knight to hop straight into f5 actually. So Duda played knight a5. Now Nakamura didn't want to give that bishop up for the knight. So now he exchanged on e6, but this is a little bit different because clearly the knight is able to hop into g6 and that's quite disruptive for black. And Nakamura castled. Knight c4, bishop c1 and rook c8. Okay, let's look at the king side. Well, that knight is very annoying for black and Duda can't castle, obviously. But on the other side of the board, well, Duda has managed to generate some fairly quick play on the queen side. The bishop has had to go back to c1. This pawn centre is quite pleasant for black. You know, these squares are covered at f5 and d5. Although the king can't castle, there's no obvious way through. And perhaps it'll come here to f7. And Nakamura could push that knight away straight away, but instead he decided to play h4. Obviously with the thought that he's going to play h5 to secure that knight on g6. Rook c6 played. And now my thought was, is Duda actually intending to march his king to the queen side? I think it's too risky. Queen f3 played. If king d7, then rook d1, and you can see that there's a nasty alignment of king and queen here. And knight takes pawn is happening. Pin and win. So no, instead the king actually did in the end go to f7. h5 secures the knight, so that was the idea. Queen c7, but there's no panic. The king is okay on f7, and there's still some pressure here. Knight d1 is a good idea, so this knight can reroute, and potentially this knight can be pushed away. Knight b6 goes back voluntarily. Knight e3 looks good there. Knight d7. c4. And here Duda decides to try to get rid of that knight on g6. It's tempting to play knight c5 to take here, but I think he was right not to. Because after this, yes, white gives up a pawn. But black really always has to watch out for c5, which will break up these pawns. So, you know, if white just plays a move like rook e1, and who knows, maybe bishop b2, and then you're building up for c5. I don't know if you... Yeah, I mean, black obviously has a lot of moves here, but that's quite a risky pawn to take. So Duda plays knight f8, and I think that is the correct decision to try to exchange off that knight. And if, let's say, knight takes here... Well, it gets rid of that knight. Now, I mean, even this position is not at all clear. b4 with similar ideas, potentially bishop b2 and c5, sometimes b5 as well. Oops, that was a mouse slip. I mean, this is still a very dangerous position. But Nakamura decided to just play the knight back and leaving black's pieces in a bit of a jam here. Now it's an interesting move. Duda could have broken free with g5 and some piece exchanges, and you know, black can operate on both sides of the board here. Yes, the king's a little bit more exposed, but there are so many pieces around the king, I don't think it matters that much. So that's an interesting way to play, but instead knight h7, b3, securing that pawn, and knight g5, queen e2. So Duda finds a way to take that pawn in the middle. Is it wise to do this? Well, let's have a look. Bishop b2. I mean, it's clear that Nakamura has compensation here because the king isn't entirely safe on f7. Black's rooks are split. They're not working that well together. Although, you know, the back rank is clear, so it's not too bad. But I don't know, it just feels like white's pieces are very well placed here. And, you know, there are opportunities to try to break open the position. Rook e8, knight g6, the knight hopped back. And now the king steps round. So the king is trying to find a more secure home here. Rook d1, but still looks, you know, Nakamura doesn't panic here. Just plays his rook into the middle, so just puts his pieces on nice squares. And now knight g4 starts to open things up a little bit. Bishop d8 removes the bishop from the knight's range. Knight takes, knight takes. Rook d2, so it's just looking to perhaps double on the d file. Knight d7. And now f4 is a really tempting move when you can see that black's major pieces on the queen side don't really connect with the king side very well. This looks like a very tempting option for white. A little bit surprised that Nakamura didn't go for that, actually. Feels like quite a natural continuation. But instead he played rook fd1, also not bad, with some pressure here. But now comes bishop g5, and this is a problem for white. Attacking the rook. The rook came up to d3, and now Duda seizes his chance. b5. If that's taken, then rook c2. Double attack wins material. So Nakamura had to play bishop a3, attacking here. And now, well, over the next few moves, it just goes a bit crazy. The best continuation here is just to shut out that bishop. b4. And then hit the rook. If that's taken, then black wins material. Simple knight fork. And otherwise the rook can move. So let's say rook g3. d5. I mean, the whole position is sort of blowing apart now. That is still an issue, rook c2. And what exactly does white play here? You know, this is not an easy position. Well, you can try and sort of break free like this, but then knight f6 secures that pawn in the middle. This looks very good for black. I mean, there are other options for white, but still, b4 is definitely the move. Instead, Duda played d5. That was taken. Rook c2. And now white has a move that saves him here. So what did white play here? White play, your turn. Bishop d6, so before that bishop gets shut in, it pops out. If that's taken, then queen takes rook. So this gets wild and wacky now. Rook takes queen, bishop takes. And here, basically, if black wants to equalize, then you can take on d5 and go knight f6. And it looks like we're going to get an exchange of pawns here. The rook is attacked, this one is attacked, this one's attacked. You know, pawns are going to be exchanged off here, and it should end in a draw. But instead, Duda played knight c5. And here, if Nakamura plays rook f3, then it looks like he's got the better position. Well, I mean, you can see that white's pieces are simply better than black's here. These pieces coordinate really well, whereas black's sort of look a little bit scattered here. And white has the advantage. It's potentially difficult for the king when, if he's not careful, then there could be a mating net around the king. But instead, Nakamura played d6. And here, Duda, what did Duda do? Duda backed down. He played knight d7. He believed Nakamura. He should have taken that rook, which looks incredibly scary given this pawn looks like it has a clear run through, but watch that bishop. In fact, with some precise moves, this is still okay for black. So if white makes a queen, then watch what's happening at the other end of the board. Suddenly the marauding rook has taken a pawn, and these look too dangerous. So queening, not a good idea. So what about rook d6? You can take. And now what's going on? I mean, it's very, very unclear. Looks bad for black, but you know, with some only moves, black is okay. I mean, it looks as though rook e8 is about to win the game, but in fact rook g8 is still okay for black. Now, you know, these are very precise moves. It's possible that Duda just wasn't able to calculate a safe route there. But what's clear is that after he backed down with knight d7, he is in huge trouble. Because, let me see, material is actually even, but Nakamura has been left with that beautiful passed pawn on d6, which provides cover on these squares, and you know, there's always potential for a rook to land here, or sometimes a knight to land here. Bishop d8, rook c3, bishop e6. So we've seen so far, I mean, this reminds me of the Kalashnikov actually, where this bishop comes out here. That's the breakout bishop, and now we see an excellent example of the bad bishop bounce. Bouncing off the back rank to b6, looking at the pawn on f2. But okay, you see this maneuver very often in the Najdorf as well. Unfortunately here, it's not good enough for black. Black still is at a disadvantage. But it's a good try. But Nakamura plays very well. Just ducks out of here. And if rook takes f2, then actually rook c7 is very strong. If that's taken, rook d8, well, you can see what's going on here. Some simple tactics, knight e7, and wins the rook with that knight check. So king h2 just played, king h7, trying to get away from that knight fork. f3, okay, now that secures the king side. And once black is passive, it's really not good. So basically, I mean, one potential idea for white is just to play rook c1 and then rook c7. Give the exchange, and that should be winning. Bishop e3. Well, he's not averse to exchanging pieces here. And, okay, of course, he still can't do this because of bishop f4 check, but rook c7. So he's got his rook to the 7th rank. And now the king steps up. So now this is a threat to take here. b4. Okay, Duda is trying to distract, but it's no good. I'm afraid this exchange doesn't get anywhere. I mean, it's possible just to take here and then give a check. But, well, Nakamura selects a very clean finish as well. Rook c8. Threatening a mate on h8. Rook b8 played. Rooks exchanged. And then d7. That is the final move of the game. And here Duda resigned. Why did he resign? White wants to make a queen. If that's taken, then that can be taken. And we've got a lovely knight fork here. And with an extra piece, that is a piece of cake to win for white. Wow, what a game. I mean, so many ups and downs in that. I think Nakamura basically got exactly the kind of position that he was hoping for. You know, after this, it's just a really tense position. To play this kind of position perfectly for both sides is impossible. The important thing is, you know, when you're playing for a win, you want to keep the tension, and that was maintained really all the way through the game. And at the critical moments, well, it's funny, you know, here it's still very unclear. Duda missed a good opportunity with b4. But isn't it funny how Nakamura manages to hold his nerve in such situations and pulled through? Well, what does that mean for the standings? So, quick recap. Here we go. Jan Nepomniachtchi has won the tournament with a round spare. He has 9 out of 13, 9 points. He can't be caught. In second place, 7 with 7.5, Hikaru Nakamura. And then Ding Liren on 7. Rajabov and Caruana on 6.5. So in tomorrow's round, we have the crucial last round pairing of Ding against Nakamura. The other games don't count. But if Ding wins, he will get second place. If the game is a draw, then Nakamura will get second place. So, and of course, if Nakamura wins, he's got second place. So basically, Nakamura has draw odds in this game. Ding's task is absolutely clear. He knows he's in a must-win situation, but he does have white in that crucial last round game. I'm really looking forward to it. So there's a tie-break. We're not going to get a tie-break. We're going to get a clear second place. It's funny how like I'm talking about this as though this is the, they're playing for first prize. But remember, if Carlsen doesn't want to defend his title, we will have Nepo against whoever is in second place. Just watch out for that. Quick reminder that all my chessable courses, not just the Kalashnikov course, but my 2 other courses, How Good Is Your Chess and How Good Is Your Chess 2, they're all on sale for the duration of the Candidates Tournament. So only 1.5 days to go, and they're only on sale for that time. So do check them out. You'll find the links down there somewhere, and the book is out too. I'll put the link for that down there as well. Thanks for watching. Do tune in tomorrow. Well, I'll let you know what happens in the crucial final round.